April is Autism Awareness Month, and according to a recent study by the CDC, 1 in every 45 U.S. adults have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Now, the ratio is even smaller for children. The study reveals that 1 in every 36 children are on the spectrum. Colleen Allen is president and CEO of Autism Alliance of Michigan. Thanks so much for joining us here on First at 4 Focus, Colleen.
Thank you for having me.
Your organization was founded in 2009, and it's dedicated to improving the quality of life for people who are living with autism. Tell us about the services you offer there.
Sure. So we are a statewide professional organization, and our flagship program, which we call it the flagship program because it's the reason we were ever created, is called our Autism Navigator Service. And this is an opportunity for families living with autism at any point in the lifespan to connect with a professional, whether that's an education or a clinical field or social work. But from the very beginning, for example, a new diagnosis, to be able to pick up the phone or through email, communicate with somebody who can walk that parent through all of the important services that may be needed, ask them about safety concerns. You know, we have children who wander. At the other end of the lifespan, of course, we get questions like, who's going to take care of my adult child someday when I'm gone? So it's served now almost 20,000 individuals and families across our state. And from that, we learned so much about what are the barriers that are being faced by this population in all regions. And that drives our advocacy. So our work is really grounded in the Navigator program and in what we hear from families they're facing, again, from the earliest diagnosis until really well into adulthood. We also do
Colleen,
a great deal of community education and training so that our first responders, our school teachers, our bus drivers, our community workers in museums and even at the airport, that we're training them and educating them to understand what autism is, and then how to respond appropriately in a safe, welcoming capacity, so that we can make our community feel really welcome when they step out the door.
And Colleen, I was surprised to learn that the true number of people living with autism may not be known because adults especially are not diagnosed, or they won't disclose a diagnosis. Could you talk about the importance of getting a diagnosis and intervention?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so for some individuals, seeking a diagnosis is a deeply, deeply personal issue. In some cases, there's an awareness. Of course, we know this with the adult segment, an awareness that, there's something that is wrong with me, or, why do I struggle so much when I go on that job interview, or I don't have friends, and maybe wondering, do they have a diagnosis, and maybe afraid to seek it or to learn that they're on the autism spectrum. In other cases, we know of individuals who do have a diagnosis but aren't comfortable disclosing that. And so while we have numbers around those that are documented or identified, we suspect a large percentage of individuals, especially adults, do not have a diagnosis or are not disclosing that. So while the numbers keep increasing, and I will be very clear, those numbers are increasing because we are identifying more people, and we're identifying them earlier. And we've changed the definition of autism from what used to be very classic, significant symptoms. And that would confine the numbers, right, to only that about a third of the population, to now we're talking about, engineers who, have all the skills and cognitive capacity to live independently, but still struggle socially, and that puts them on the same spectrum as
And
that
Colleen,
person
I'd
who
like
is
to
nonverbal,
interrupt just
who
for a
needs
moment.
24/7 care.
Colleen, can
So
you
the
hear me?
numbers have grown for those two reasons primarily.
Colleen, can you hear me?
Not well.
Okay, well, I'd like to interrupt just for a moment.
Sure.
Our time is running out. I just want to ask you, how can people best advocate for people who have been diagnosed with autism? Is there somewhere they can get resources or some research so they can best navigate for their loved ones, their friends, or someone in their community?
Sure. So the best way to support a person with autism is to include them in your activities, learn about autism, send them up to us, certainly, if it's a colleague, a neighbor, a friend's child, if they're new to the diagnosis, or even if they've been, living this world for a long time, we very likely are able to help with whatever their needs may be. And to reach out through our website, autismallianceofmichigan.org. And get involved in our events. We have a very big gala coming up where we are still selling tickets. All of that information is on our website.
Colleen Allen, she's the president and CEO of Autism Alliance of Michigan. Thanks so much for being with us here on the First at 4 today. Have a great afternoon.
You as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.